really wholesome fandom.
I have made a terrible mistake. Like I did when I reached 10,000 subscribers, I decided it would be fun to let people who watch my videos pick a topic for my next one. Of course, they picked Steven Universe. I don't know what I was expecting. I thought they might pick something fun or funny, but instead what you want to hear is me complain about a cartoon for the third time. Fine. Thankfully, there weren't nearly as many stupid suggestions for topics as last time, but I still got things like a bunch of you showing up to repeat the exact same thing you said last time, sometimes by the same person. Hi. I also got people substituting their request of me making a video about the Jewish question with demands I tell them what happened to the USS Liberty, to which I say, yes, I sunk that bitch and I will do it again. And a guy who took the liberty of responding to every person asking me to make a video about a cartoon by leaving a comment with a quote of mine that he didn't even quote correctly, so thanks for that guy, that's real helpful there. Also, this one guy left somewhere in the ballpark of 3 million comments over the course of 3 days. Keep trying, buddy, I'm sure one of these will be funny sooner or later. Oh, and also there were some real high IQ comments that included things like, why am I growing cheese? Where is my dad? Talk about laws, make another video about Mr. Enter, talk about Mr. Enter, punch Mr. Enter, and apologize for Israeli war crimes.
No!
Anyway, I decided not to make a video about Steven Universe and instead go with the runner-up suggestion, which was just say the N-word a lot, which I just did, so the video is over. Okay, but for real, I guess I have to do this. Even though I really don't want to. I mean, what am I even supposed to say about this shit at this point that I haven't said about the show already? It is almost exactly as bad for almost all of the same reasons, but I already committed to doing this again, so let's get on with the tedious play-by-play plot summary. Let's get this on the road, okay? Right. So the movie starts with a cliche opening of a curtain to the sound of knockoff Disney music before transitioning to a book opening, which is like, are we pretending this is a stage play or a book? You have to pick one. You have to pick one tired, overused trope and just stick with that one, okay? You can't have both. So before we get too far into this, I'd just like to say I will not be talking about the animation quality in this video because there's really nothing to say about it. Besides, it's exactly as bad as it is in the show. You'd think they put a little more money and effort into this because it's a movie, even though it's not a theatrical release, but I guess not. They did bring back Takafumi Hori again to do the work they're too incompetent and lazy to do themselves, but all of the rest of it is just good old ugly Steven Universe with zero effort and characters changing sides from shot to shot with no real excuse. So the movie is really just a super long episode and nothing more. Now, over back of the book opening, we begin hearing the first of many songs, and also the one that is probably the worst in the entire bunch. You see, Steven Universe is a musical of sorts, probably because almost everyone on staff looks like they used to be part of a hipster indie folk band and things just didn't work out, so they're channeling their broken dreams of a music career into this show now instead. Most of the songs in this movie are bad, unnecessary or both, and there was no reason to make this a musical really, besides the fact that the people on the show's staff like making music and don't really care if the audience wants to listen to it or if it's good. The first song really is amazingly bad. It's literally the Diamonds singing about how much they, and everyone else in the entire universe, loves Steven and how great he is. At a later point, I began thinking that maybe this song is intended to be like that, as one of the film's themes is Steven resting on his laurels because he thinks everything has been resolved and being resentful of having to do any more work, but I'm still 50-50 on this being intentional or if the creators of the show just honestly created a character that is their ideal man, which is to say fragile and obsessed with his emotions, and then made this scene to sing the praises of their own creation. Either way, the song's most hilarious line is when they sing that Steven is always putting others first, which is decidedly not what he does or has ever done. And the crew's continual belief that it is a key component of one of the main problems with this movie and indeed the entire show. Steven never puts other people first beyond the most superficial way. Mostly he just does what he feels like doing without consideration for others, and the plot retroactively justifies it. A good example of this happens in one of the last episodes of the series, so let's get back to that for a second, okay? It's a good example mostly because I don't remember anything that happens in earlier episodes and I refuse to go back and look, so we'll have to stick with this one. So in the last episodes of the show, Steven and the Gems go to Homeworld to try to talk to White Diamond. They quickly realize that the culture there is completely different to their own, and they have to play along for a while if they want to have any chance of talking to her. But this plan falls apart almost immediately as they completely ignore the fact that they are stranded on an alien planet, completely surrounded and will be immediately killed if they fuck up, as Sapphire and Ruby can't handle 5 minutes without rubbing their gems together and quickly fuse right in front of the Diamonds despite knowing that it is an offense punishable by death on Homeworld.
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
It is sexual assault to grab a woman's private parts without her consent. Consent is not imposing your will on someone and having them just not resist. If you don't consent to sexual activity, it's not legal.
And then they attack them, because if you've already gone this far, you might as well attempt regicide. Hilariously, they lose instantly, which should have been a predictable result, which is why, if they were smart, or if this show made sense, they would not have attempted this in the first place. And I wish the show had ended right there. I wish the next scene would have been Steven waking up, asking where all of his friends are, and being told that they've already had their gems reduced to atoms, and that he's going to live the rest of his life and die on this planet. Sure, it would have been a bit depressing, but it would have been at least a good lesson for the kids watching about how you shouldn't just do whatever you want and how your moral indignation doesn't necessarily mean that things will go your way. But that's exactly the opposite of the lesson that Steven Universe has always tried to teach kids. Characters in Steven Universe do whatever they feel like because they can't control themselves, and the people who make the show think that they shouldn't have to because whatever they're doing is an allegory for something they think is good. In this case, some sort of lesbian race mixing. And so, all the negative consequences are negated by borderline Deus Ex Machinas every single time. In this specific episode, Blue and Yellow instantly throw away the beliefs that they've held for millennia and help Steven fight for the things that just an hour ago they found disgusting enough to commit murder over. And everything just gets resolved by doing exactly what you feel like doing all of the time with no regards for consequences. Which is a great lesson to teach little kids, I think. That's why I'm going to help all of the gay Steven Universe fans live up to their beliefs, okay? Just donate to my new GoFundMe for the first and probably last Steven Universe Iranian Gay Fuckathon. We will pay for every gay Steven Universe fans to fly out to Iran, where they can all have a big orgy in front of the Ayatollah's house, just like Steven would have done if he was real. And just like in the show, I'm sure that everything will work out fine. Remember to always act on your emotions without thinking, always. Anyway, if you're not gay and would like to participate in the Great Iranian Fuckfest, we'll pay for your ticket too, just don't forget to bring a big nylon sheet if you plan to stand in the splash zone when the police arrive. It'll be like one of those Gallagher shows.
No.
What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Steven Universe movie. Sorry, that got away from me for a second. So the song ends and the book closes and we see that it's a literal book being held up by White Diamond in front of a space TV camera. So it's a TV show of a book on a theater stage? Isn't this getting a little too meta? Well, anyway, she introduces Steven and he gets right to showing everyone how much he puts others first by immediately contradicting everything she just said without warning on live television, forcing her to cut the feed. Then we have another song where the Diamonds beg Steven to live with them in an almost sexual tone and he ignores them and just fucks off anyway. The song isn't very good, but it ties in at the end in a way that almost works, so I'll give it a pass this time. What I'm not giving a pass to though is what came directly before the song, which is the Diamonds telling Steven that they've completely dissolved their empire and hierarchical structure and that Yellow Diamond has dismantled her army. A few problems with this. Firstly, it's amazing how fucking in love and subservient the Diamonds are to Steven. The writers really do see this character as some sort of god amongst men. All he needed to do was make White blush once and their entire society comes crumbling down. But I actually don't have much problem with this since at least it's a realistic depiction of how a society where only women exist would find itself groveling at the feet of the first man they ever met within a single day. So points for realism on that, but then you have to ask yourself, what took so long? This movie starts after a 2-year time skip and begins with Steven having just finished getting the Diamonds to disband the army and stop killing people for no reason, which is something they should have been able to do instantly and were willing to do right at the end of the show, which was canonically again 2 years ago. So why didn't they just do it at that moment? What took 2 years? Lastly, I still don't get why the society even needed an army. As far as we know, there are no other sapient races in the universe. The Gem War was the only insurrection in this race's history. So, who is this army ever meant to fight? What are they conquering? There is no one to fight back against them, there are only gems. It's still not clear why they needed Earth in the first place since they could have made gems anywhere in the cosmos. Why did they go specifically to the one planet that already had life? And what are they supposed to do now? After all, destroying planets is the only way they are able to reproduce, so it's still not clear how the Diamonds were even actually bad. I guess now with Steven putting them in their place, there just won't be any more gems created. Ever. Gosh, with all the expected decline in gem birth rates, it'll be almost like a White Diamond genocide. They might even have to start bringing immigrants into Homeworld to counteract the population decrease, but it's okay. I'm sure these new gems will make a great replacement. I really can't wait for the next Steven Universe movie where the Diamonds get culturally enriched. What was I talking about again? Oh right, the plot, the movie. Okay, so this bit of the movie ends and we finally transition to Earth. I promise I'm gonna pick up the pace right now. You know how I like to make a video, spend a good 90% of it talking about the first 30 seconds and then skip right to the end. It's how good quality content is made, okay? So Steven talks to Connie, who's going to space camp at age 14. I don't know, is this normal in America? I don't live there. Isn't she a bit too old? I don't know. Then we have the best moment in the entire movie when she kisses Steven and they both blush, proving he isn't gay and giving the entire fanbase an aneurysm at the sight of Sugar daring to promote heteronormativity.
It is sexual assault to kiss a woman without her consent, without warning.
Why is Connie in this movie, by the way? She's pushed into the plot's broom closet for like 80% of it, and then shows up again near the end and still doesn't do anything? Okay, so right after that, we get to the next pointless song, which is by far the most unnecessary. where the main cast summarized the plot of the entire show as if anyone who watches this movie doesn't already know it, and as if anyone who actually doesn't know it would be able to understand anything from this 2-minute song that is a condensed version of like 200 episodes.
I can't believe we've come.
The song is also intended to establish one of the movie's recurring themes, which is Steven thinking that all of the problems of the show are solved and being mad when they aren't. Overall, like a lot of the songs in this film, its production is pretty basic. The writing falls into one of two camps. It's either overly literal, where they explain the obvious but in rhymes, or too abstract, which serves no real purpose. A good musical usually strikes a good balance between the two extremes and talks about what's going on without literally describing its own plot. Also, Steven is finally not fat, and Amethyst has a boob window in her shirt, so overall I actually like the direction this movie is going in. If only Amethyst could also lose a few pounds, that would be a real improvement.
Oh, I have a question!
Yeah?
Were you guys ever babies?
Definitely not.
Uh-oh. Stinky.
Anyway, it takes about 3 minutes from the end of this song for the next one to start, making it the fourth in about 12 minutes. See what I mean when I say that there's too much of these and that most of them aren't needed? In any case, the show's villain Spinel shows up and sings her villain song. This one is pretty grating to listen to, and it comes when we've been just introduced to her. Her backstory is intended to remain a mystery for much of the rest of the movie, so unless you've already seen it, this song just talks about things that don't make any sense to the audience yet. So I don't know why it was written like this. I think they're just bad at writing. It would have been better to skip this one entirely, honestly. On the plus side, we get to see what it looks like when a bunch of people who hate fight scenes hate fights and want to make a show where all conflict is resolved without fighting, get a show greenlit by pretending it's going to have lots of fights in it, and then begrudgingly have to animate a couple of them. So the fight ends with Spinel and the Gems losing their memories, Steven losing his powers, and a big drill full of estrogen being stuck in the ground. Then, after another song, they go ask the tertiary cast for help.
Only 83.7%? We'd better get cracked!
We get another overly literal song, reaffirming the themes of the movie for like the 10th time, as well as describing things that just happened 3 minutes ago. And then, someone suggests that they should ask the Diamonds how to reverse the effects of the weapon that made everyone lose their memory. But Steven doesn't want to talk to the Diamonds because they're creepy and want to fuck him. So as soon as someone suggests this, Lapis chimes in saying that Steven has healing powers, so he should be able to figure this out, which is a complete non sequitur. But Steven drops trying to talk to the Diamonds nonetheless and lets his friends continue living as imbeciles while a giant drill keeps doing whatever it's doing for just a while longer so he could avoid the mild discomfort of talking to his relatives. As usual, Steven is putting others first. So instead of doing what's easy and obvious, Steven comes up with the plan of trying to make all of his friends relive the entire 10,000 years of their lives, which will somehow fix them. He's told by Lapis that this is insane and would take centuries to accomplish and might not even work, to which Steven responds, well, let's do it anyway, and then guess what? It ends up working. Again, Steven does whatever makes him feel good to the detriment of everyone else, and reality itself bends to accommodate him. So they set their plan into motion. They threaten Ruby and Sapphire with murder to try and force them to have gem sex, hoping that it will get their memories back. But this fails because Steven is too much of a pussy and can't hurt them even to save them. But again, things magically work themselves out so that Steven doesn't have to do things that he doesn't like, as a giant anvil conveniently hanging above Ruby falls on top of him and he just stands under it for several seconds instead of moving out of the way despite doing high-flying acrobatics mere seconds ago to avoid falling debris just like this. This ends with Sapphire fusing with him to save him, so again, Steven fails to do something he doesn't like, even if it's to save his surrogate mothers, and again, the problem resolves itself so he doesn't have to, and doesn't have to deal with any of the consequences either. After that, we get another song about them fusing that, this time, doesn't explain anything or move the plot forward in any way, and feels like someone just wrote this and they decided to put it into the movie after the fact, but in any case, this doesn't bring their memories back, which should be an indication that this idea doesn't work and they should go talk to the Diamonds instead, but they don't. Instead, they lose track of Amethyst and Steven goes looking for her. Conveniently, she ends up in a place that might help jog her memory, but it actually doesn't, so all it really does is remind Steven he's supposed to be making her remember things, which is what he was doing anyway. Then they start singing again as we watch a montage of several hours go by. By the end of the song, emphasis is back to normal somehow, and they go look at Spinell's giant drill. They are informed by Peridot that the drill is seeping poison into the ground and that it will destroy all life on Earth in about 41 hours once all the poison is drained. So it's a good thing that Steven just wasted several of those hours riding a train for fun. Then Steven tries to rip the drill out of the ground and no one tries to stop him, even though they tell him immediately afterwards that it was rigged to speed up or explode if you touch it. So I don't know, maybe they were wishing he died, because I sure wish the same thing. The next thing that happens is that they decide to evacuate the city and also have a rock concert in the city that they're trying to evacuate. Okay. But they have to have a concert because watching a music show will, in some vague way, contribute to Pearl getting her memories back, and so the entire city should just stay in the blast radius of a giant acid bomb instead of Steven just going to see the diamonds. This makes perfect sense, it's fine. Honestly, this is just a very contrived excuse for them to put more shitty songs into the movie that sound like they wrote them anyway and wanted to use them for something at some point and just figured, you know, let's just put them here. So they go to the concert and we get to hear another song, yet another fucking song by Sadie about hating having to work a retail job, and it becomes ever more clear that someone on this show's staff had to work as a cashier at Walmart at some point in their lives, and they really need to get over it and stop using this show as an outlet to complain about it. Like, it was just a shitty job, okay? There are rape victims who aren't as traumatized by what happened to them as whoever it is on this show that keeps inserting these songs into it, okay? You had to work at McDonald's, just get over it. Next we have the creepiest moment in the entire series as Steven and his dad fuse, creating a muscular, human, sweaty sex doll with a noticeably large bulge in his pants.
What's this?
You think he's got two dicks or maybe just both of their dicks combined in size, I don't know. The hentai artists are gonna have to figure this one out. Here again, I'd like to remind everyone that fusion is a metaphor for sex. In fact, it's not just a metaphor, it literally is sex. It's gem sex. I'm willing to concede that maybe it isn't always sex, but this is a children's show, so it should never be sex. And even if it is, even if it's just sometimes sex, and Steven and his dad are fusing, then they should never ever ever do something that is sometimes sex. I'm not saying that Steven had sex with his dad, but I'm saying that Steven maybe had sex with his dad, okay? Anyway, this song again is a bit too abstract for a musical, and there's a continuity error where first Steve Gregg is able to fly and lift others into the air with what appears to be telekinesis, and you think that maybe it's just the fusion's special power, but then he starts falling out of the sky and Opal saves him by flying, which isn't something she's ever been able to do before, so just good old lazy writing. Okay. Also, there's a moment where no one is playing their instruments and you can still hear music. Anyway, the plan ends up working because seeing someone she cared about disappearing by fusing is what Pearl needed to remember things, but Spinell runs away. Steven catches up with Spinell, and there's another song about how Rose used to be her friend but then left her in some garden, told her to wait and just never came back.
She went out for cigarettes and never came back.
This song is also a setup for the film's finale, and it's one of the more okay songs, okay? It's a pretty good production, nice music, somewhat of a generic chord progression, strikes a good balance between being overly literal and not being literal enough. An okay song, okay? I'm fine with this one. I do think they could have gotten a better take of Spinell's voice actress singing because she can't seem to hold the final note of the song, but should have gotten a better take is a criticism that could be applied to about half of the lines said in this movie. Most of the voice actors flub at least one of their lines, like they couldn't be bothered to do a second read.
Spinell, you might be onto something. If every experience they lost is a piece of who they are, if every experience they lost is a piece of who they are, is a piece of who they are.
And Greg's voice actor fucks up almost every single thing he says throughout the movie, and I don't understand why.
I own a car wash!
In any case, the song isn't too bad and sets up one of the core themes of the movie and this character, specifically having feelings for someone and not realizing they've lost interest in you a long time ago, and Spinell developing a sort of abandonment anxiety as a result. Really nice theme for a completely different movie. As usual, I'm left asking, who is this for exactly? The kids in the show's age demo can't really relate and probably can't even understand what this plotline is even about. And the adults who watch the show really shouldn't be watching the show. Did someone on staff just get dumped and couldn't handle it without using this show to vent? Can no one on this production keep their personal issues out of this program and just make a show for children? Is it really too much to ask that they look for a writing gig somewhere else if they can't restrict themselves to age-appropriate content? Am I asking too much here? We'll get back to this point a bit later, but for now, I'd also like to point out that this sets up a bit of a continuity issue. Just like it didn't make sense for it to have taken Steven 2 years to make easy changes to the Gem Empire with the diamonds bending to his every whim, it's not clear where or how Spinell got that giant drill. It's not obvious how much time has gone by, but it looks like Steven made that announcement from the start of the movie in the morning. Spinell says when they first meet that she's been watching it on loop, and the tone of her voice implies she's been doing it for a long time, but she couldn't have been without the timeline being fucked up. My guess is that the intent of that line was for her to say that she's been stuck in the garden for a long time, and one of the writers just fucked it up and wrote the line in a way that makes it sound like she's been watching the video of Steven for a long time, even though she's only seen it that day. And then there's the issue of the drill and the weapon she uses to delete people's memories. It was a recurring theme in the early seasons of the show that Homeworld has advanced so much technologically that it's almost unrecognizable for those who have been separated from it since the end of the Gem War. And although nothing ever came of this motif, it still begs the question of how Spinell, the borderline retarded genetically bred clown, got her hands on a weapon so advanced that Peridot, whose job on Homeworld seems to have been something having to do with technology, couldn't understand how it works or how to turn it off. After Spinell's song ends, she instantly transfers her attachment issues from Rose onto Steven and imprints on him like a baby duckling. Connie rejoins the movie to do nothing for the rest of it, then Steven carelessly causes a misunderstanding that makes Spinell think he's about to delete her memories and attack him, because the writers realized that they just resolved the movie's central conflict before the actual third act and needed some contrivance to unresolve it, otherwise the movie would end 20 minutes early. During their fight, Steven breaks the weapon, proving to Spinell that he wasn't trying to attack her with it, but the movie instantly ignores it even happened and she just keeps attacking him because the movie can't be over yet, even after the central conflict has been prematurely resolved twice. Also, it isn't clear if the gems retain their memories of what they were doing when their memories were gone once they get their memories back, which, if they do, would mean that Spinell was right there next to Steven watching him when he put her weapon in his pocket because he had nowhere else to put it, and therefore would know that he wasn't plotting to erase her memory, so yet another fuck up, good job everyone. Also, during the fight, Spinell makes the drill pump out the rest of Austin Powers' mojo into the ground, and the Earth isn't destroyed, even though that's what was supposed to happen, and then someone says the word truth, and the movie pretends like it's always been a central theme to Garnet's character, even though it really hasn't, and she finally gets her memories back, and then there's obviously a song about it. So anyway, Spinell set the estrogen drill to overdrive, and Steven then orders the other gems to go save the people who somehow haven't evacuated yet, maybe if they didn't hold a concert right next to Ground Zero. Steven then decides to climb the drill to go talk to Spinell, even though he can't fly and doesn't have any of his powers back yet.
That thing sure is big! You wanna climb it or something?
Despite knowing this, none of his friends who can fly or easily scale the giant drill take a second to help him out, and instead, we are treated to a scene of manufactured tension as Steven slowly climbs up this giant syringe, nearly falling to his death several times, while the camera keeps cutting away to shots of his friends all standing around and watching him instead of doing anything. Look at Lapis, she's fucking flying, she has wings. Just stop gawking at him. Just go help him. You went away to help people, but you're obviously not helping them because you have time to just stand there and watch. Just fly up there. Why are you watching him? Okay, In any case, as funny as this is, he climbs all the way up, and Spinel attacks him and he starts crying because he doesn't have his powers back yet. And then we are hammered over the head with one of the movie's themes for the millionth time, as Steven spells out to us that the reason all the other gems reverted back to their normal state, and he hasn't, is because they experienced change, even though it's pretty fucking arbitrary what constitutes change in this movie. I mean, okay, Amethyst didn't change. She just hung out with Steven for a while and then magically got better, and the catalyst for Garnet to transform back to normal was that she heard someone say the word truth, and that somehow gave her a world-shattering epiphany. I don't know what's going on. Did Garnet have some sort of problem with pathological lying that she overcame during the show? I don't remember. I don't think so. It feels more like they just didn't plan this out. Amethyst just changes back because she changed back, and Garnet changes back after hearing the word truth because the script only had one draft, and near the end of writing, someone said, "Wait, we forgot to change Garnet back to normal. Quick, make something up." So they just made this up on the spot because they didn't feel like going back and changing parts of the script. I'm not saying that's what they did, but I'm saying it sure feels like that's what they did. Pearl's transformation having to do with change sort of makes sense if that's what you're going for, but Spinel makes the least sense of any of them because despite not having her memories throughout the movie, it's also clearly indicated that she actually does remember something from her past in spite of having her memories erased. Then she changes back to normal after singing a song about things that happened to her that she shouldn't be able to remember. So she got her memories back not by going through change. In fact, she re-experiences being abandoned by Steven like she was with Pink, which should have worked in the way that it worked with Pearl. So actually, she got her memories back by getting her memories back before she actually got her memories back, even though she clearly already got her memories back, despite the fact she wasn't supposed to have her memories back. In short, Steven's realization that restoring gems is done by experiencing change makes no sense because if you think about it, that was only true for one of the 4 people that got their memories back, so it's not clear how he came to this conclusion. Oh, and it also doesn't make sense for Steven because the change he goes through is realizing that he was wrong to not want to fight anyone at the beginning of the movie, but the idea was supposed to be that you make people re-experience changes that they've already been through. Steven, and by extension his gem, haven't had this experience before his gem got reset, so it shouldn't turn him back to normal to do it now. He'd need to relearn all the lessons he already learned in the show, not learn new ones, for this to make any sense. Anyway, I'm overthinking this. So Steven gets his powers back, they fight while singing about it, and then the drill explodes and that somehow saves the day at the end. But wait, remember when they were warned about not letting the drill explode? Remember when they were told that the shit that's inside the drill would destroy all life on Earth? Whatever happened to that? The drill is either empty or almost empty, but only Beach City seems to be affected by it, and blowing it up didn't kill anyone in the blast radius or make anything any worse than it already was. Does the poison need to be 100% drained for it to start taking effect? Because if it is, it looks like the entire movie could have been resolved by them sacrificing Beach City to save the world and deliberately causing the drill to explode, since the explosion only seems to harm the immediate area around it. What was the point of all this? Also, it looks like the tube is already empty and the Earth is fine. What good does blowing this thing up do now? He literally waited until it was too late and then made things worse. So in any case, the movie winds down to its ending and probably its dumbest and most unintentionally offensive part. The Diamonds show up and decide to take Spinel home with them, using her as a substitute for Pink, while she uses them as her new obsession, and that's supposed to be a happy ending, I guess.
Do you guys remember Spinel? Mom left her on a floating garden in space.
It was only 6,000 years. I could do that standing on my head.
This illustrates what I've said in every one of these videos and why I wouldn't have bothered to make one about this movie if I didn't make the mistake of letting you idiots choose. Because I knew I would just end up having to say all the same stuff all over again, so here we go. Don't use your show for babies as an outlet for your adult stories that you couldn't put anywhere else, because all you'll do is get the worst of both worlds. And this is a perfect example of why. Spinel clearly has abandonment issues. The Diamonds clearly haven't finished grieving for their sister. The four of them forming an unhealthy codependent relationship is not the happy ending that this movie's swelling music seems to imply that the writers think that it is. Especially since this is the exact same problem a lot of people had with Pearl. The thing people complained about with Pearl was that she was only in love with Pink because she was her slave and was basically programmed to. Something they tried to address in one of the first songs of this movie, only to fall right back into the exact same trap by the end of it and have Spinel fall right back into a role as a selectively bred personal clown, programmed to be obsessed with her master while mistaking that for happiness. And these slaves are happy being slaves take away his meat. Even worse, if you remember that on multiple occasions, the show tries to portray the Diamonds as abusive towards Pink in their rush to force as many talking points into the series even if they contradict each other. So if you remember this fuck up, instead of the attempts to course correct the show's plot on the fly that they had to do several times before settling on one narrative at the last moment, then the message becomes that you should replace one abusive relationship with another, and that if someone is abusive, you should just give them someone else to torment, and if that someone else is an abuse victim, then they would both be happy. Seriously, what is the moral of the story here? That if you find someone that has abandonment issues, that becomes violently obsessed with you as soon as you give them the least bit of attention, then you should find someone else that has similar attachment issues because of a loss of a loved one, and then have them act as a stand-in for one another? It takes Spinel literal seconds to decide that Steven has to be her new best friend and then try to kill him minutes later because she thinks he's going to leave her. It then takes her simply making eye contact with the fucking Diamonds to start the cycle all over again while singing the same song she sang when she did this with Steven. And this is framed in a way that's supposed to make us think that this is a good thing. On the opposite side, the Diamonds, the show implies, had a mutually abusive relationship with Pink and then created a dictatorship trying to deal with her loss. Then they tried to force Steve to slide into the spot she left when she died and make him pretend to be her. And them doing the same thing to Spinel is a fairy tale ending? I don't understand this. Hell, they even call her one of Pink's lost treasures, suggesting they view her as an object. What a god-awful implication. And I know it's stupid to talk about abusive relationship subplots in a fucking children's cartoon, and I feel stupid for doing it, but it's even more stupid to actually put them in there in the first place. You invite this sort of criticism when you do this sort of shit. Even more so if you do it so badly. So what you get when you take 20-odd hypersensitive liberal arts majors with no writing skills, who view every interpersonal interactions that they don't like as a bigoted personal attack, then let them collectively act as de facto writers of a show, is them each pulling the plot in different directions while trying to work in as many of the topics that they're obsessed with into it, like spousal abuse and rape, ending up with wildly conflicting subtextual narratives that can only be interpreted in terrible ways. The reason why I have to make videos about a children's cartoon where I talk about wife beating is because someone made a children's cartoon with a subplot about wife beating. So maybe, just don't. I've said all of this before. Kids shows should be for kids. Adult shows should be for adults. And adults who write kids shows should stop using them as their personal outlet or a tool to implant their own ideas into kids' heads because A, it's more than a little bit morally questionable, B, the shows don't lend themselves well to this sort of content unless you're a really talented writer, and C, none of these people are talented writers. So what you end up with is a movie telling an audience of kids who probably and hopefully don't understand it that the best cure for mental illness is enabling it, which is also what the show has to say about transsexuals. See, got that one in there, right at the end. Had to put one tranny joke in there. Couldn't let it slide. Right at the end, had to slip one in there. Anyways, so that's it. The movie ends. It isn't clear if the Earth was or wasn't destroyed because despite draining the entire contents of that drill, the effects are either localized or the entire Earth was destroyed and they forgot to add an establishing shot to show that. Either way, Steven could just fix it by kissing the ground, and whether or not he has to do this to just the city or the entire planet is unclear because there's a transition implying he gradually did it, and it couldn't have taken too long because he hasn't aged. They then sing another song about how Steven was wrong to think he will get to have a happily ever after because there will always be more work to do.
I can't believe we've come
They just keep coming and coming.
Even though he just defeated his last enemy in the entire galaxy in less than 2 days and there's literally nothing left for him to worry about ever again, so the message doesn't really fit the reality of the movie. And then there's a strange out-of-place minute or so of them dancing on stage before the curtains close. And then that's the end. So I hope you're all happy. I have made another video about a movie that isn't worth watching or reviewing, which was really just an extra long episode of a show I've already said everything I have to say about and don't want to talk about anymore, and which you shouldn't want to listen to me talk about anymore since it's just a shitty show for retarded children. I would have rather just call the fanbase autistic a few more times, but I've already done this so much and have so few criticisms left that I ended up actually treating it like an actual movie worth taking seriously. My only comfort in making this video is knowing that it will probably be a huge disappointment to the people who asked for it and that the show is officially over and I never have to talk about it ever again.
Steven Universe Future on your Cartoon Network.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Wait!